Joining me on the channel today is Chrystal D. Giles, debut author of Take Back the Block, out January 26th from Penguin Random House. It's a middle grade novel about a sixth grader who wants to save his neighborhood from gentrification. Welcome, Chrystal.
Hello, thanks for having me.
I always like to start at the beginning and explore your journey to becoming a published author. What kind of kid were you?
I was a quiet kid. I was smart. I love school, and I am the youngest of four. So I often kind of found myself off by myself, which is probably how my love of reading started. I spent a lot of hours as a young child reading stacks of books.
So you had four siblings and you were the youngest. Was there much like of an age gap between the siblings, or were you kind of close to the same age?
So my oldest two felt like miles ahead of me. My oldest sister is about 10 years older than me, so she was off doing her own thing. And my brother was second in line, and he was oftentimes doing his own thing because he was the only boy. And my sister right above me, we're only about 2 years apart, but for whatever reason, she had her group of friends and I had mine, or I was by myself. So I somehow spent a lot of time by myself as a very young child.
It seems like once the parents have kind of figured out, okay, we got the kid system down, like they kind of leave the last kids alone a little bit, like, because they're like, okay, you're gonna turn out okay because the others turned out fine. So we're not gonna be overprotective or like all up in your space all the time. And so you kind of had that time to kind of be off on your own as kind of the introverted kid. And what kind of books did you like reading as a kid?
So I loved Babysitter's Club, of course. I loved like Boxcar Children. I remember like Encyclopedia Brown. So I guess a lot of series and things like that. One of my favorites was Roll of Thunder, Hear My Cry. That was one I remember a lot from a kid. So mostly series, I think.
What I was really impressed about when I was reading your description of your debut is that you take like a really challenging topic, like a really heavy topic, and just the description. It's a kid who is wondering why are his parents going to protests all the time, like what's the big deal, and then it becomes real to him. So how did you like approach taking like a really heavy topic and like breaking it down in a way that's easy to understand for like a sixth grader?
Yeah, so I started out writing picture books. So I think the idea that any topic is appropriate for children was just something that I said, we can do that, right? Like you can take any topic and put it in a book and make it accessible to young people. So I had originally taken a general theme of changing neighborhoods and I had it in a picture book and I loved it. It wasn't successful in terms of getting an agent and all that, but I knew I wanted to take that topic and I thought I could fold it up and put it in a middle grade story, but I had to have the perfect character to do that. I think when you have a tough topic, it has to have the perfect character. So it took me a while to formulate Wes, who's the main character of the story. And he needed to be fun. He needed to be a regular kid with regular kid problems. So after I got the voice of the character, adding bits and pieces of the tough topics was so much easier. It is hard to balance, but having that perfect main character really helps.
How did you find that main character? Is he based off someone?
He's not based off anyone. I knew I wanted him to be a reluctant activist. So I wanted him to be kind of against the whole idea of marching and spending his free time on community work. I started drafting this book really before like the Fight for Our Lives, I've known March for Our Lives kids and all those movements. So I wanted him to be normal enough to just care about his life and his friends. So that started first. Then I layered in kind of fun. He's not exactly funny. He's a little sarcastic, but I wanted to make him have a personality that kids could relate to. So then that was second. Then I gave him some really fun qualities. He loves clothes. He's very fashionable. And he's been in his neighborhood his whole life. And so I think most kids can relate to having everything around them change, even if they can't relate to the topic or the activism or social justice. You can for sure relate to having your friendships change and your home change. So I think all of those things kind of layered. And then I said, okay, this is the guy.
Tell us about the day that you found out your book was going to be published.
Oh my goodness. So I had a very eventful publication journey. The exact day was was after an auction. So my book went on auction after maybe a week and a half of being on submission.
Okay, that's amazing. Like that never happens. I mean, I was on submission for 2 years. Many, I've heard just long stories of being on submission. So that's amazing.
I know. So, and it is amazing, and it sounds incredibly fun, and it was. But I must tell you, in the midst of it, it was scary, and I was panicking, and I was not prepared for it. I prepared for a longer submission. I prepared for maybe one person being interested, maybe, and then after I've been on submission, maybe a day or two, we got an email back from an editor who was reading it and said, "Oh my goodness, I got chills. Please, do not sell it till you talk to me." And I thought, okay, but at times, in this business, you hear that kind of thing, and you never know if it's real. So after I had been on submission, probably 4 days, maybe, that original editor said, okay, we will be issuing an offer early next week. And then my agent, who was incredible, she started kind of pushing other people who were reading it. Hey, look, we have a potential offer. You may want to hurry and read. And so I was starting to panic because I thought, okay, this is happening, maybe. And then we were, after about a few more days, she said, okay, I think I'm going to call an auction. We have a few people interested. And so at that point, I was nervous and excited, but still nervous. So the auction was only about 2 days, but we ended up having 2 people kind of contending there at the end together. And honestly, I was nervous. I couldn't sleep because I had to make a decision. And so the day I finally made the decision, I took a deep breath, but I still felt anxious, I think, even after. Ultimately, it was the right decision, but yeah.
Was it anxious about choosing which one would be the best and weighing the pros and cons and that sort of thing?
Yes.
How did you decide?
Well, so the funny thing about the auction is that we went in, I had one book. This is not a series. I did not have another book that I thought was perfect for a second book. I was writing something, but I wasn't sure. And so the first person who made the offer at auction did it for a 2-book deal. And I was terrified. And I said to my agent, I don't know if I want a 2-book deal. I was completely green. I had no idea. And she said, well, 2-book deals are great for debut authors because it gives you a little bit of breathing room because you've sold the second book. And so that editor was very excited about the book, and I was really hoping I could work with that house. The editor that I ultimately went with, she had liked my pitch at DV Pit, which is Diverse Voices Pitch Contest for Twitter, and she also liked the book. I talked to both of those editors as well as one other, and the editorial vision that the editor I chose, she just had a better editorial vision. It aligned exactly with how I thought the book should be edited. I also needed someone to guide me through the process because, like I said, I felt very green, and I wanted someone to take it, help me execute the vision that I had, and then kind of show me how the industry works and pull me along. And so her vision just matched closer to what I thought I needed for the book.
Is this your first novel?
Yes, it's my first novel. I've written bits and pieces of things, but this is my first completed novel.
How long have you been on a writing journey?
I started writing formally in 2015. My son was born that year. I was collecting books for his library, and me and my husband got all of the classics, the ones we remember as young children. And shortly after that, I started looking for very particular books. I wanted books with little black boys on the front. I was looking for books with like fathers and sons and mothers and daughters. And I was naive, I think, at that time to think that I could run out and find it. I thought I could go to the store and get like a stack of books. And I was quite disappointed and shocked that those things were not on the shelf. I mean, for my husband's first Father's Day, I wanted to get a book bundle or put one together of Black kids and Black fathers. That's it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Fairly simple. And it just wasn't available in that way. I just couldn't find it. Then I went online and I started searching for these things. And I ran across like think pieces and articles and statistics. And those type of diverse voices just were not available. And so at that point, I was probably naive and ambitious. And I said, well, maybe I'll write a book about my son, you know? And so my first inclination was to solve a problem, so to speak. And so I started writing picture books. I joined SCBWI. I kind of fell upon a critique group, and then I joined another critique group. And so from there, I started just writing picture books and coming up with ideas. And then eventually one of those ideas kind of parlayed into a novel.
What's been the best revision tip that you've gotten along the way?
Oh, for this novel, I had all kinds of ideas, but they didn't really connect. So the best revision is to really think about what you want to say and then connect those things into a common theme.
Mm-hmm. Are you a plotter? Like do you focus on the plot, or are you a pantser who kind of makes things up as you go along?
Somewhere in between. I pants my way through this novel. I kind of pants my way through my second novel. What I'm learning now, I'm working on my third novel. What I'm learning now is if you take a little bit of time to plot some of the big points, it helps you along the way. So I do love the freedom of being able to just like let my characters dance on the page. But I will say those big moments, it does help to kind of plan out some of those.
Okay, so tell us about your debut in your own words. What's it about?
Okay, so this is the cover.
It's
Take back the block. It is about 11-year-old Wes, who was a regular kid. He'd rather be playing basketball or video games with his friends. Instead, he's dragged from one community event to another by his activist parents. Activism does become personal for Wes when his neighborhood, Kensington Oaks, is targeted by a powerful developer. So readers will follow him on a journey to save his neighborhood and also navigate his changing friendships. And at the heart of the story, it's really about community and friendship.
I love it. And do you focus on the character first when you're writing, or the plot first?
I've learned really more character. I think sometimes with the type of stories I like to write, our readers may not relate to the exact plot, or, you know, maybe they can't relate to every single circumstance. But if you have a character that's universal and they go through some universal things, most people will get it. So I say character.
And what's your favorite step? Is it drafting or revising?
I guess revising. Yeah.
And are you a perfectionist or a chaos artist?
I'm a perfectionist.
So a perfectionist who spends like weeks and weeks and weeks tweaking like one sentence, or do you try to get it like down perfect the first time, or do you like just revise things constantly?
I try to get it down correctly the first time. I'm not the writer, you know, when people tell you just draft, just write, don't revise. I don't do that. So I draft and I revise kind of as I go. For sure, if I end a writing session and I start the next day, I'm going to reread the previous chapter and I probably will make tweaks. Um, and then even during revision, I take multiple rounds to process and go through and think. I take a long time to make sure because I want to get it right. I'm also kind of very analytical, very structured. So all of those things make me a perfectionist.
Are you a morning writer or an evening writer?
Evening for sure. Yeah, I'm not a morning person, so evening for sure.
Was there any point, I mean, you had a really fast submission, which is amazing, which attests to your amazing skills. Was there ever a point where you're like worried, oh, I don't know if I'm ever going to be published, this is really hard?
Not with this story. I had queried multiple picture books prior to, and there were lots of moments throughout that process that I just didn't think it was going to happen. I mean, I thought, yeah, this industry is too hard. This industry's rough. Yeah, won't happen. So multiple times with those early submissions, this story, I had a different feeling about. So this one I felt like would see the world in some way.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Would you ever like to be famous?
No. I, I'm not politically correct enough to be famous.
Is it because you're afraid of like of getting like overly critiqued by the public, of that? Oh, did you hear what Chrystal Giles said?
Probably also when I think of fame, right? So you can be famous in different ways, right? You could be famous in a good way where people know you, they admire you, they can't wait to see what's next. And I'm too introverted, I think, for that. And then there's fame probably in a negative light where, you know, we know that the next thing coming out of that person's mouth is bad. I'm not to that level either, but I'm probably too introverted to overshare. And my opinions on things are probably too spot on, and I'm not great at kind of
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
If you could have any non-supernatural talent or ability that you don't already have, what would it be?
oh, that's tough. Um, Probably the ability to be in the moment and enjoy the moment. I'm not one of those people. I'm always like forward thinking or overthinking something. And so sometimes I wish I could just be calm in the moment and just like enjoy it. And I think that's an ability that I just don't have. So.
What are you working on now?
I am editing my second novel. It is out with Random House in 2022. And it's another middle grade novel. It's a standalone. And so I'm editing that one. And I'm also drafting. I have no idea if it'll stay this way, but it's a dual point of view middle grade story as well. And it's a sister story. So I'm excited to be drafting it. I'm fairly early on though. So I don't know if the end version will be this version, but so I'm editing and writing at the same time. So
How exciting. Everyone be sure to check out Take Back the Block by Chrystal Giles. I put by links below and also links to Chrystal's social media and website. Thank you so much for being on the channel.
thank you for having me. This is fun.